"Philip II Augustus, King of France," shouted at his wife. He forbade her from entering his bedchamber. His voice echoed through the stone corridors of the palace. The servants exchanged glances and cautiously peeked around the corner. Near the threshold of the royal bedchamber stood the bewildered Ingeborg of Denmark, their new Queen of France, delicate, feminine, and beautiful. Shrinking in shame and drenched in tears, Ingeborg clutched a bedsheet, hastily wrapping herself in it before retreating to her chambers. The castle's residents were confused. Should they approach the king, or was that a terrible idea? Had the newlyweds really quarreled the morning after their first night together? Everyone was curious, and so are we. Philip II. Augustus was born in the year 1165. By 1179, he was already seated upon the French throne with great authority. From an early age, he demonstrated the power of monarchy, conquering vast lands and incorporating them into the kingdom. He was also the first French ruler to be called King of France rather than King of the Franks. Philip was serious and severe. Unlike his indulgent successors in Versailles, Philip had a firm hand and a cold heart. Manners and etiquette had not yet permeated the daily life of royalty. His first marriage to Isabella of Hainaut was unhappy. The king desired an heir and cared little for his wife or love. For years, Isabella was unable to bear a child, but in 1187 she finally gave birth to the future King Louis VIII. However, 3 years later she died during childbirth, delivering twin sons. Philip did not grieve. He quickly agreed to a second marriage, knowing that child mortality could easily claim his only heir. Philip married Ingeborg of Denmark, a 19-year-old princess. She was known for her beauty, with milky white skin, long golden hair, and a gentle temperament. Moreover, Philip sought to strengthen ties with Denmark. The French envoys traveled ahead to settle the dowry and marriage contract. It was common practice for royal brides to be physically examined to ensure virginity and the absence of deformities, as the primary duty of a queen was to bear heirs. The Danish princess brought an enormous dowry, 10,000 silver marks. She arrived in France, accompanied by noblewomen, dressed in a gown of silver brocade. The king welcomed his bride wearing armor and a helmet, astride his horse like a true knight. He wanted to impress his young wife. Philip saw his bride before the official ceremony and was not displeased with her appearance. On the contrary, amid the wedding euphoria, Philip immediately ordered that Ingeborg be crowned as Queen of France after their marriage. And then came the wedding night. The consummation of the marriage was a matter of state importance, making Ingeborg Philip's official wife and Queen of France. Yet the next morning, the furious king cast his wife out of his chambers. Pale and enraged, he commanded the Danish envoys to take Ingeborg back to Denmark and annul the marriage. What went wrong? Was it the night itself, or had Ingeborg offended him somehow? It seems unlikely that she had any physical deformities, as these would have been noticed during the medical examination or immediately upon disrobing before the king. One theory suggests that a mistranslation of an old French phrase led to the belief that the queen bewitched Philip into impotence. As a result, the king accused her of sorcery. Or perhaps he had simply drunk too much wine and failed to perform his marital duties. Maybe his anger was merely a defense mechanism. Whatever the truth, Ingeborg barely spoke French. Somehow she managed to explain that she did not agree with the king's demand for an annulment. "For me, divorce is a sin," Ingeborg declared to Pope Celestine III. Philip, however, claimed that Ingeborg was a distant relative of his first wife, which gave him grounds to request an annulment. The Danish princess was sent to the Abbey of Saint Calixte, while Philip sought to dissolve the marriage and find a new wife. Most European princes and kings sided with the unfortunate Ingeborg. They rushed to marry off their unmarried daughters to avoid the fate of marrying the brutal Philip II. No one wanted to suffer as Ingeborg did, an innocent young woman abandoned in a monastery. By 1196, Philip had found a new bride. The sister of the Duke of Merania was willing to marry Philip, despite his scandalous past. While Ingeborg remained imprisoned in the fortress of Étampes, In Essonne, the beautiful Agnes of Marania married Philip. This time, there were no issues in the marital bed. Meanwhile, King Canute VI of Denmark was outraged by his sister's treatment and even considered declaring war on France. Furthermore, the Pope refused to recognize the annulment after Ingeborg personally appealed to Celestine III for protection. The annulment was revoked, and Philip was accused of bigamy, making Agnes an illegitimate queen. Agnes died in childbirth. Finally, in 1214, Philip was forced to bring Ingeborg back to the royal court, thanks to the Pope's intervention. "I am the rightful queen of France, and my marriage is both complete and legitimate," Ingeborg insisted firmly. She never surrendered or accepted her fate. She had pride, willpower, and absolute certainty that she had done nothing wrong against the King of France. When Philip died in 1223, Ingeborg was by his side. In his will, the king, who had spent 20 years trying to rid himself of her, finally called Ingeborg his beloved wife. The scoundrel had stolen 20 years of her life. She died in 1236. Ingeborg remains one of the strongest women of the Middle Ages. We can only speculate about what truly happened between the royal couple on their wedding night. Philip II chose to keep the details secret, merely stating that, at close proximity, Ingeborg did not please him much, and so the king became powerless,